Hello and welcome to day 5 of A Year with Aquinas, where we are reading his Summa Theologica in a year. We are continuing today in the first part, question 7, the infinity of God. You can follow along with me on newevan.org. Article 2, whether anything but God can be essentially infinite. Objection 1. It seems that something else besides God can be essentially infinite, for the power of anything is proportioned to its essence. Now, if the essence of God is infinite, his power must also be infinite. Therefore, he can produce an infinite effect, since the extent of a power is known by its effect. Reply to objection 1. It is against the nature of a made thing for its essence to be its existence, because subsisting being is not a created being. Hence, it is against the nature of a made thing to be absolutely infinite. Therefore, as God, although he has infinite power, cannot make a thing to be not made, for this would imply that two contradictories are true at the same time. Likewise, he cannot make anything to be absolutely infinite. Objection 2. Further, whatever has infinite power has an infinite essence. Now, the created intellect has an infinite power, for it apprehends the universal, which can itself extend to an infinitude of singular things. Therefore, every created intellectual substance is infinite. Reply to objection 2. The fact that the power of an intellect extends itself in a way to infinite things is because the intellectual is a form, not matter, but either wholly separated from matter, as is the angelic substance, or at least an intellectual power, which is not the act of any organ, and the intellectual soul joined to any body. Objection 3. Further, primary matter is something other than God, as was shown above, but primary matter is infinite. Therefore, something besides God can be infinite. Reply to objection 3. Primary matter does not exist by itself in nature, since it is not actual being, but potentially only. Hence, it is something con-created rather than created. Nevertheless, primary matter, even as potentiality, is not absolutely infinite, but relatively, because its potentiality extends only to natural forms. On the contrary, the infinite cannot have a being, as is said in physics, but everything outside God is from God as from its first principle. Therefore, besides God, nothing can be infinite. I answer that things other than God can be relatively infinite, but not absolutely infinite. For with regard to infinite, as applied to matter, it is manifest that everything is actually existing possesses a form, and thus it is matter is determined by form. But because matter considered as existing under substantial form remains in potentiality to many accidental forms, which is absolutely finite and can be relatively infinite. Let me repeat that. Which is absolutely finite, can be relatively infinite. As, for example, wood is finite according to its own form, but is still relatively infinite inasmuch as it is potentiality to an infinite number of shapes. But if we speak of infinite in reference to form, it is manifest that those things, the form of which are in matter, are absolutely finite, and in no way infinite. If, however, any created forms are not received into matter, but are self-subsisting, as some think in the case with angels, these would be relatively infinite, inasmuch as kinds of forms are not terminated, nor contracted by any matter, but because a created form, thus subsisting, has being, and yet is not its own being, it follows that that being is conceived and contracted to a determinate nature. Hence, it cannot be absolutely infinite. Article 3. Whether an actually infinite magnitude can exist. Objection 1. It seems that there can be something actually infinite in magnitude. For mathematics, there is no error, since, quote, there is no lie in abstract things, end quote, as the philosopher says. But mathematics uses infinite in magnitude. Thus, an Thus, the geometrician, in his demonstrations, says, quote, "Let this line be infinite," end quote. Therefore, it is not impossible for a thing to be infinite in magnitude. Reply to objection 1. A geometrician does not need to assume a line actually be infinite, but takes some actually finite line from which he subtracts whatever he finds necessary, which he calls infinite. Objection 2. Further, what is not against the nature of anything can agree with it. Now, to be infinite is not against the nature of magnitude, but rather both the finite and the infinite seem to be proportionate properties of quantity. Therefore, it is not impossible for some magnitude to be infinite. Reply to objection 2. Although the infinite is not against the nature of magnitude in general, still it is against the nature of any species of it. Thus, for instance, it is against the nature of a bicubical or a tricubical magnitude, whether circular or triangular, and so on. Now, what is not possible in any species cannot exist in the genus. Hence, there cannot be any infinite magnitude. No species of magnitude is infinite. Rather, since no species of magnitude is infinite. Objection 3. Further, magnitude is infinitely divisible, for the continuous is defined that which is infinitely divisible, as is clear from physics. But contraries are concerned about one and the same thing. Since therefore addition is opposed to division, and increase opposed to diminution, it appears that magnitude can be increased to infinity. Therefore, it is possible for magnitude to be infinite. Reply to objection 3. The infinite in quantity, as was shown above, belongs to matter. Now, by division of the whole, we approach to matter, forasmuch as parts have the aspect of matter. But by addition, we approach to the whole, which has the aspect of a form. Therefore, the infinite is not in the addition of magnitude, but only in division. Objection 4. Further, movement and time have quantity and continuity derived from the magnitude over which movement passes, as said in physics. But it is not against the nature of time and movement to be infinite, since every determinate indivisible in time and circular movement is both a beginning and an end. Therefore, it is neither against the nature of magnitude to be infinite. Reply to objection 4. Movement and time are whole, not actually but successively. Hence, they have potentiality mixed with actuality. But magnitude is an actual whole. Therefore, the infinite in quantity refers to matter, and does not agree with the totality of magnitude. Yet it agrees with the totality of time and movement, for it is proper to matter to be in potentiality. On the contrary, every body has a surface, but every body which has a surface is finite, because the surface is the term of a finite body. Therefore, all bodies are finite. The same applies both to surface and to the line. Therefore, nothing is infinite in magnitude. I answer that it is one thing to be infinite in essence, and another to be infinite in magnitude. For granted that a body exists infinite in magnitude, as of fire or air, yet this could not be infinite in essence, because its essence would be terminated in a species by its form, and confined to an individuality by matter. And so, assuming from these parameters that no creature is infinite in essence, it still remains to inquire whether any creature can be infinite in magnitude. We must therefore observe that a body, which is a complete magnitude, can be considered in two ways: mathematically, in respect to its quantity only, and naturally, as regards its matter and form. Now, it is manifest that a natural body cannot be actually infinite, for every natural body has some determined substantial form. Since therefore the accidents follow upon the substantial form, it is necessary that that determinate accidents should follow upon a determinate form, and among these accidents is quantity. So every natural body has a greater or smaller determinate quantity. Hence, it is impossible for a natural body to be infinite. The same appears for movement, because every natural body has some natural movement, whereas an infinite body cannot have any natural movement, neither direct, because nothing moves naturally by a direct movement unless it's out of place, and this cannot happen to an infinite body, for it would occupy every place, and thus every place would be indifferently its own place. Neither could it move circularly, for so as much as circular motion requires that one part of the body is necessarily transferred to a place occupied by another, this could not happen as regards the infinite circular body, for if two lines be drawn from the same centre, the farther they extend from the center, the farther they extend from each other. Therefore, if a body were infinite, the lines would be infinitely distant from each other, and thus one could never occupy the same place belonging to another. The same applies to a mathematical body. For if we imagine a mathematical body actually existing, we must imagine it under some form, because nothing is actual except by its form. Hence, since the form of quantity as such is figure, such a body must have some figure, and so it would be finite. So figure is confined by a term or boundary. Article 4. Whether an infinite multitude can exist. Objection 1. It seems that in actuality, let me repeat that. It seems that an actual infinite multitude is possible. For it is not impossible for a potentiality to be made actual, but number can be multiplied to infinity. Therefore, it is possible for an infinite multitude to actually exist. Reply to objection 1. Every potentiality is made actual according to its mode of being. For instance, a day is reduced to act successively, and not all at once. Likewise, the infinite in multitude is reduced to act successively, and not all at once, because every multitude can be succeeded by another multitude to infinity. Objection 2. Further, it is possible for any individual of any species to be made actual, but the species of figures are infinite. Therefore, an infinite number of actual figures is possible. Reply to objection 2. Species of figures are infinite by infinitude of number. Now, there are various species of figures, such as trilaterals, quadrilaterals, and so on, and as an infinitely numerable in multitude is not all at once reduced to an act, so neither of the multitude of figures. Objection 3. Further, things not opposed to each other do not obstruct each other, but supposing a multitude of things to exist, there can be many others not opposed to them. Therefore, it is not impossible for others to also coexist with them, and so on to infinitude. Therefore, an actual infinite number of things is possible. Reply to objection 3. Although the supposition of some things does not preclude the supposition of others, still the supposition of an infinite number is opposed to any single species of multitude. Hence, it is not possible for any actual infinite multitude to exist. On the contrary, it is written, quote, "Thou hast ordered all things in measure and weight and number." End quote. Wisdom 11:21. I answer that a twofold opinion exists on this subject. Some, as Sevian and Algazal, say that it was impossible for an actual infinite multitude to exist absolutely, but as an accidental infinite multitude was not impossible. A multitude is said to be infinite absolutely when an infinite multitude is necessary that something may exist. Now, this is impossible, because it would entail something dependent on infinity for its existence. Hence, its generation could never come to be, because it is impossible to pass through an infinite medium. A multitude is said to be accidentally infinite when its existence as such is not necessary but accidental. This can be shown, for example, in the work of a carpenter requiring a certain absolute multitude, namely, art and the soul, the movement of the hand and the hammer, and supposing that such things were infinitely multiplied, the carpentering work would never be finished, forasmuch as it would depend on an infinite number of causes. But the multitude of hammers, inasmuch as one may be broken and another used, is an accidental multitude, for it happens by accident that many hammers are used. and it matters little whether one or two or many are used, or an infinite number, if the work is carried on for an infinite amount of time. In this way, they say that there can be an accidental infinite multitude. This, however, is impossible, since every kind of multitude must belong to a species of multitude. Now, the species of multitude are reckoned by species of number, but no species of number is infinite, for every number is the multitude measured by one. Hence, it is impossible for there to be an actual infinite multitude, either absolute or accidental. Likewise, multitude in nature is created, and everything is created is comprehended under some clear intention of the Creator. For no agent acts aimlessly. Hence, everything created must be comprehended in a certain number. Therefore, it is impossible for an actual infinite multitude to exist, even accidentally. But a potentially infinite multitude is possible, because the increase of multitude follows up upon the division of magnitude, since the more a thing is divided, the greater number of things results. Hence, as the infinite is as the infinite is to be found potentially in the division of the continuous, because we thus approach matter, as was shown in the preceding article. By the same rule, the infinite can also be found potentially in the addition of multitude. Question 8. The existence of God in things. Article 1. Whether God is in all things. Objection 1. It seems that God is not in all things. For what is above all things cannot be in all things, but God is above all things, according to the Psalm. Quote, "The Lord is high above all nations," end quote, Psalm 112, verse 4, etc. Therefore, God is not in all things. Reply to Objection 1. God is above all things by the excellence of his nature. Nevertheless, he is in all things as the cause of being of all things, as was shown in the above article. Objection 2. Further, what is in anything is thereby contained. Now, God is not contained by things, but rather he does contain them. Therefore, God is not in things, but rather things are in him. Hence, as Augustine says, that, quote, "In him things are, rather than he is in any place," end quote. Reply to Objection 2. Although corporeal things are to be said in another, as in that which contains them, nevertheless spiritual things contain those things in which they are, as the soul contains the body. Hence, as also God is in things containing them. Nevertheless, by a certain similitude to corporeal things, it is said that all things are in God, inasmuch as they are contained by him. Objection 3. Further, the more powerful an agent is, the more extended is its action. But God is the most powerful of all agents. Therefore, his actions can extend to things which are far removed from him, nor is it necessary that he should be in all things. Reply to Objection 3. No action of an agent, however powerful it may be, acts at a distance, except through a medium. But it belongs to the great power of God that he acts immediately in all things. Hence, nothing is distant from him, as if it could be without God in itself. But things are said to be distant from God, by which the unlikeness to him in nature or grace, as he was as also he is above all things by the excellence of his own nature. Objection 4. Further, the demons are beings, but God is not in the demons. For there is no fellowship between light and darkness. 2 Corinthians 6:14. Therefore, God is not in all things. Reply to Objection 4. In the demons, there is their nature which is from God, and also the deformity of sin which is not from God. Therefore, it is not to be absolutely conceded that God is in the demons, except with the addition, inasmuch as they are beings. But in things not deformed in their nature, we must absolutely say that God is. On the contrary, a thing is wherever it operates. But God operates in all things, according to Isaiah 26:12, quote, Lord, thou hast wrought all our works in for us, end quote. Therefore, God is in all things. I answer that God is in all things, not indeed as part of their essence, nor as an accident, but as an agent is present upon that upon which it works. For an agent must be joined to that therein where it acts immediately, and touch it by its power. Hence it is proved in physics that things moved and the mover must be joined together. Now, since God is very being by his own essence, created beings must be his proper effect, as to ignite is the proper effect of fire. Now, God causes this effect in things, not only when they first begin to be, but as long as they are preserved in being, as light is caused in by the air as light is caused in the air by the sun, as long as the air remains illuminated. Therefore, as long as a thing has being, God must be present to it, according to its mode of being. But being its innermost but being is innermost in each thing and most fundamentally inherent in all things, since it is formally in respect of. Let me try that sentence again. But being is innermost in each thing and most fundamentally inherent in all things, since it is formal in respect of everything found in a thing, as was shown above. Hence it must be that God is in all things and innermostly. Article 2. Whether God is everywhere. Objection 1. It seems that God is not everywhere. For to be everywhere means to be in every place. But to be in every place does not belong to God, to whom it does not belong to be in places at all. For, quote, corporeal things, end quote, as Boethius says, quote, are not in place, end quote. Therefore, God is not everywhere. Reply to objection 1. Incorporeal things are in place not by contact of dimensive quantities, as bodies, but by contact of power. Objection 2. Further, the relation of time to succession is the same as the relation of place to permanence, but one indivisible part of an action or movement cannot exist in different times. Therefore, neither can one indivisible part in the genus of permanent things be in every place. Now the divine being is not successive but permanent. Therefore, God is not in many places, and thus he is not everywhere. Reply to objection 2. The indivisible is twofold. One is the term of continuous, as a point in a permanent thing, and as movement in succession. And this kind is of the indivisible and permanent things, for as much as it has a determinate side, cannot be in many parts of a place or many places. Likewise, the indivisible of an action or movement, for as much as it has determinate order and movement or action, cannot be in many parts of time. Another kind of indivisible is outside of the whole genus of the continuous, and in this way, incorporeal substances like God, angel, and soul are called indivisible. Such as a kind of indivisible, such a kind of indivisible does not belong to the continuous as a part of it, but as touching it by its power. Hence, according as its power can extend itself to one or many things, to a small thing or to a great one, in this way it is in one or many places, and in a small or large place. Objection 3. Further, that further what is naturally further what is wholly in any one place is not in part elsewhere. But if God is in any one place, he is all there, for he has no parts. No part of him then is elsewhere, and therefore God is not everywhere. Reply to objection 3. A whole is so called with reference to its parts. Now, part is twofold. A part of the essence, as the form and matter are called parts of the composite, while the genus and difference are called parts of species. There is also the part of quantity, which into which any quantity is divided. What therefore is whole in any place by totality of quantity cannot be outside of that place, because the quantity of anything placed is to consummate the quantity of the place, and hence there is no totality of quantity without totality of place. But totality of essence is not to consummate the totality of place. Hence it is not necessary for that which is whole by totality of essence in a thing not to be all outside of it. This also appears in accidental forms, which have accidental qualities. As an example, whiteness is whole in each part of the surface if we speak of its totality of essence, because according to the perfect idea of its species, it is found to exist in every part of the surface. But if its totality be considered according to the quantity which has it accidentally, then it is not whole in every part of the surface. On the other hand, incorporeal substances have no totality either of themselves or accidentally, except in reference to the perfect idea of their essence. Hence, as a soul is whole in every part of the body, so is God whole in all things and on one in each. On the contrary, it is written, quote, I fill the heaven and earth, end quote, Jeremiah 23:24. I answer that, since place is a thing, to be in a place can be understood in a twofold sense, either by way of other things, i.e., as one thing is said to be in another no matter how, and thus the accidents of a place are in place, or by a way proper to a place, and thus things being placed are in a place. Now, both these senses, in some way, God is in every place, and this is to be everywhere. First, as he is in all things, giving them being, power, and operation, so he is in every place as giving its existence and locative power. Again, things are placed in a place inasmuch as they fill place, and God fills every place, not indeed like a body, for a body is said to fill a place inasmuch as it excludes the co-presence of another body, whereas by God being in a place, others are not themselves excluded from it. Indeed, by the very fact that he gives being to the things that fill every place, he himself fills every place. Article 3. Whether God is everywhere by essence, presence, and power. It seems that the mode of God's existence as in all things is not properly described by ways of essence, presence, and power. For what is by essence in anything is in it essentially. But God is not essentially in things, for he does not belong to the essence of anything. Therefore, it ought not to be said that God is in things by essence, power, and presence. Reply to Objection 1. God is said to be in all things by essence, not indeed by the essence of the things and things themselves, as if he were of their essence, but of his own essence, because his substance is present to all things as the cause of their being. Objection 2. Further, to be present in anything means not to be absent from it. Now, this is the meaning of God being in things by his essence, that he is not absent from anything. Therefore, the presence of God in all things by his essence and presence means the same thing. Therefore, it is superfluous to say that God is present in all things by his essence, presence, and power. Reply to Objection 2. A thing can be said to be present to another when in its sight, though the thing may be distant in substance, as is shown in this article, and therefore two modes of presence are necessary, by essence and presence. Objection 3. Further, as God by his power is the principle of all things, so he is like the same likewise by his knowledge and will. But it is not said that he is in things by knowledge and will. Therefore, neither is he present by his power. Reply to Objection 3. Knowledge and will require that the thing known should be in one. Let me try that again. Knowledge and will require that the thing known should be in the one who knows, and the thing willed in the one who wills. Hence, by knowledge and will, things are more truly in God than God in things. But power is the principle of acting on another. Hence, by power, the agent is related and applied to an external thing. Thus, by power, an agent may be said to be present to another. Objection 4. Further, as grace is perfection added to the substance of a thing, so many other than perfections are likewise added. Therefore, if God is said to be in certain persons in a special way by grace, it seems that according to every perfection there ought to be a special mode of God's existence in things. Reply to objection 4. No perfection except grace added to the substance renders God present in anything as the object known and loved. Therefore, only grace constitutes a special mode of God's existence in things. There is, however, another special mode of God's existence in man by union, which will be treated on its own place. On the contrary, a gloss of the Canticle of Canticles says that, quote, God by a common mode is in all things by his presence, power, and substance. Still, he is said to be present more familiarly in some by grace. End quote. That quotation was from St. Gregory. I answer that God is said to be in a thing in two ways. In one way, after the manner of an efficient cause, and thus he is in all created things by him. And another way, he is said he is the thing. Another way, he is in things as the object of operation, as is in the operator. And this is proper to the operations of the soul, according as the thing known is the one who knows, as the thing desired is the one in desiring. In the second way, God is especially in the rational creature which knows him and loves him actually or habitually. And because the rational creature possesses this prerogative by grace, as will be shown later, he is said to be thus in the saints by grace. But how is he in other created things by him? But how he is in other things created by him may be considered from human affairs. A king, for example, is said to be in the whole kingdom by his power, although he is not everywhere present. Again, a thing is said to be present in other things which are subject to its inspection, as things in a house are said to be present to anyone, who nevertheless may be not in the substance in every part of the house. Lastly, a thing is said to be by way of substance or essence in a place which its substance may be. Lastly, a thing is said to be by way of substance or essence in that place in which its substance may be. Now there were some, the Manichaeans, who said that spiritual and incorporeal things were subject to divine power, but that visibly and corporeal things were subject to the power of a contrary principle. Therefore, against these, it is necessary to say that God is in all things by his power. But others, though they believed that all things were subject to the divine power, still did not allow the divine providence extended to these inferior bodies. And in the person of these it is said, quote, he that walketh about the poles of the heavens, and doth not consider our things, he doth not consider and walketh. End quote. Job 22:14. Against these, it is necessary to say that God is in all things by his presence. Further, others said that although all things are subject to God's providence, still all things are not immediately, created by God, but that he immediately created the first creatures, and these created others. Against these, it is necessary to say that he is in all things by his essence. Therefore, God is in all things by his power, inasmuch as all things are subject to his power. He is by his presence in all things, as all things are bare and open to his eyes. He is in all things by his essence, inasmuch as he is present to all things as the cause of their being. Article 4. Whether to be everywhere belongs to God alone. Objection 1. It seems that to be everywhere does not belong to God alone. For the universal, according to the philosopher, is everywhere and always. Primary matter also, since it is in all the bodies, is everywhere. But neither of these is God. It all as appears from what is said above. Therefore, to be everywhere does not belong to God alone. Reply to objection 1. The universal and also the primary matter are indeed everywhere, but not according to the same mode of existence. Objection 2. Further, number is in things numbered, but the whole universe is constituted in number, as appears from the Book of Wisdom. Therefore, there is some number which is in the whole universe and is thus everywhere. Reply to objection 2. Number, since it is an accident, does not of itself exist in place but accidentally. Neither is the whole but only part of it in each of the things numbered. Hence it does not follow that in its primarily and hence it does not follow that is primarily and absolutely everywhere. Objection 3. Further, the universe is a kind of, quote, whole perfect body, end quote. But the whole universe is everywhere, because there's no place outside of it. Therefore, to be everywhere does not belong to God alone. Reply to objection 3. The whole body of the universe is everywhere, but not primarily forasmuch as it is not wholly in each place, but according to its parts. Nor again is it everywhere absolutely, because supposing that other places existed besides itself, it would not be in them. Objection 4. Further, if any body were infinite, no place would exist outside of it, for so it would be everywhere. Therefore, to be everywhere does not appear to belong to God alone. Reply to objection 4. If an infinite body existed, it would be everywhere, but according to its parts. Objection 5. Further, the soul, as Augustine says, is, quote, whole in the whole body and whole in every one of its parts, end quote. Therefore, if there was only one animal in the world, the soul would be everywhere, and thus to be everywhere does not belong to God alone. End quote. If there were only one animal, its soul would be everywhere, primarily indeed, but only accidentally. Objection 6. Further, as Augustine says, quote, the soul feels where it sees and lives where it feels, and is where it lives, end quote. But the soul sees as were everywhere, for in a succession of glances it comprehends the entire space of the heavens in its sight. Therefore, the soul is everywhere. Reply to objection 6. When it is said that the soul sees anywhere, this can be taken in two senses. In one sense, the adverb anywhere determines the act of seeing on the part of the object. And in this sense, it is true that while it sees the heavens, it sees in the heavens, and in the same way it feels in the heavens. But it does not follow that it lives or exists in the heavens, because to live and to exist do not import an act passing to an exterior object. In another sense, it can be understood according as the adverb determines the act of the seer, as proceeding from the seer. And thus it is true that where the soul feels and sees, there it is, and there it lives according to its mode of speaking, and thus it does not follow that it is everywhere. On the contrary, Ambrose says, quote, Who dares to call the Holy Ghost a creature, who in all things and everywhere is always is, which assertedly belongs to the divinity alone. End quote. I answer that. To be everywhere, primarily and absolutely, is proper to God. Now, to be everywhere primarily is said of that which is whole itself is everywhere, which in its whole self is everywhere. For if a thing were everywhere according to its parts in different places, it would not be primarily everywhere, for so much as what belongs to anything according to part does not belong to it primarily. Thus, if a man has white teeth, whiteness belongs not to the man, but to his teeth. A thing is everywhere, absolutely, when it does not belong to it to be everywhere accidentally. That is merely on some supposition, as a grain of millet would be everywhere, supposing that no other body existed. It belongs therefore to a thing to be everywhere absolutely, when on supposition it must be everywhere. And this properly belongs to God alone. For whatever number of places be supposed, even an infinite number be supposed, besides what already exists, it would be necessary that God should be in all of them. For nothing can exist except by him. Therefore, to be everywhere primarily and absolutely belongs to God and is proper to him, because whatever number of places be supposed to exist, God must be in all of them, not as to a part of him, but as to him very self. Question 9. The immutability of God. Article 1. Whether God is altogether immutable. Objection 1. It seems that God is not altogether immutable, for whatever moves in itself is in some way mutable. But as Augustine says, quote, the Creator's Spirit moves himself neither by time nor by place, end quote. Therefore, in some way, God is mutable. Reply to Objection 1. Augustine there speaks in a similar way to Plato, who said that the first mover moves himself, calling every operation a movement, even as the acts of understanding and will and love are called movements. Therefore, because God understands and can love himself, in that respect, they say that God moves himself. Not, however, as a movement and change belong to a thing existing in potentiality, as we now speak of change and movement. Objection 2. Further, it is said of wisdom that it is, quote, it is more mobile than all things active, end quote. Wisdom 7:24. But God is wisdom itself. Therefore, God is movable. Reply to Objection 2. Wisdom is called mobile by way of similitude, according as it diffuses its likeness even to the outermost of things. For nothing can exist which does not proceed from the divine wisdom by way of some kind of imitation, as from the first effective and formal principle, also as the work of art proceeds from the wisdom of the artist. And so in the same way, inasmuch as the similitude of the divine wisdom proceeds in degrees from the highest things, which participate more fully of its likeness, to the lowest things which participate of it in a lesser degree, there is said to be a kind of procession and movement of the divine wisdom to things, as when we say that the sun proceeds to earth, inasmuch as the ray of light touches the earth. In this way, Dionysius expounds that the matter that every possession of the divine manifestation comes to us is from the movement of the Father of light. Objection 3. Further, to approach and to recede signify movement, but these are said of God in Scripture, quote, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you, end quote. James 4:8. Therefore God is mutable. Reply to Objection 3. These things are said of God in Scripture metaphorically, for as the sun is said to enter a house or to go out, according as its rays reach the house, so God is said to approach to us or to recede from us when we receive the influx of his goodness or decline from him. On the contrary, it is written, I am the Lord, and I change not. Malachi 3:6. I answer that, from what precedes, it is shown that God is altogether immutable. First, because it was shown above that there is some first being whom we call God, and that this first being must be pure act, without any admixture of potentiality, for the reason that, absolutely, potentiality is posterior to act. Now, everything which is in any way changed is in some way in potentiality. Hence, it is evident that it is impossible for God to be in any way changeable. Secondly, because everything which is moved remains as it were in part and passes a part and let me try that again. Secondly, because everything which is moved remains as it was in part and passes away in part, as what was moved from whiteness to blackness remains the same as to substance. Thus, in everything which is moved, there is some kind of composition to be found. But as it has been shown above, that in God there is no composition, for he is altogether simple, Hence, it is manifest that God cannot be moved. Thirdly, because everything which is moved acquires something by its movement, and attains to what it had not attained previously. But since God is infinite, comprehending in himself all the plenitude of perfection of all the being, he cannot acquire anything new, nor extend himself to any one whereto he was not extended previously. Hence, movement belongs. Let me try that again. Hence, movement in no way belongs to him. So some of the ancients constrained it, as it were, by truth, decided that the first principle was immovable. And we will continue tomorrow on question 9, Article 2, whether to be immutable belongs to God alone. I hope you've enjoyed this reading, and if you did find it enjoyable and spiritually nourishing, I would pray that you share it with a friend. I hope that you have a great day, and God bless you. Goodbye.